Hi, my name is Dyck, and I'm a C5 Quadriplegic. All I remember is the lights, but I woke up in the hospital about a week later and I was told by a reconstructionist that we're at the scene of the crash, that I lost control and I went into a median that was about 2 or 3 feet high. I flew over my bike going about 50 to 60K, and I unfortunately went headfirst into a cement planter. So basically, when I went headfirst into a cement planter, my spinal cord decompressed or compressed like this, basically like an accordion. And all my vertebrae went basically every which way you can possibly imagine. So I suffered multiple spinal cord injuries. About 13 or 14 vertebrae were injured. They saw my helmet cracked into 4 pieces. I was bleeding from my ears and all over my face, and I was struggling to breathe. Obviously, I wasn't moving. There was no movement. I found out that I had a 12-hour spinal cord surgery to basically fuse my spine together with 4 rods and 22 bolts all the way down my back. So after the surgery, they ended up giving me a 1% chance of walking again. I suffered 28 total injuries. So I broke my scapula, fractured a bunch of my ribs, punctured my lungs, and obviously stuck in the hospital for about 6 months. It said you're going to be in a power wheelchair for the rest of your life. You should get your family to start doing renovations in your house right away. We should put an elevator in, ramps in and out of the house, just to make it more accessible for me. And I just remember saying, like, my lungs weren't working properly, so my breathing was really heavy at that time. And this was just after, so I took a deep breath in and I said, fuck that. When I first started rehab, they didn't really have much that they can do with me, since you are paralyzed from like the neck down. There's not much you can do. So I started with about 5 minutes of therapy a day. I was stuck laying horizontally for so long that when they would sit me up at a slight degree in like the bed, I would pass out because I wasn't used to that yet. Keep going until I can get vertical again, so like the blood doesn't rush down, you don't feel faint. So once I was actually able to sit up, we started like trying to get my fingers working again and my hands. I only did therapy in my wheelchair and in the bed for about a month or 2. Go to the gym and work out just like an able-bodied person. One of my biggest goals after my injury was to actually compete on stage again, and I wanted to compete against able-bodied people. It was a grind for sure. Don't like complaining about it, because obviously everyone has their issues during prep and things like that, but this prep was a hell of a prep because of my injury. Everything is so much more difficult. Even like the daily things like going up to get a glass of water, making your food, like all this takes so much more energy for me than what it used to. And like even getting dressed in the morning, just everything was so much more difficult. But it really showed my sense of character and what I was able to do and how I was able to overcome the obstacles that were placed in my life, and ended up competing for the provincial qualifiers. I came 3rd, and 8 weeks later I competed in the provincials, where I placed 6th. And ever since then I wanted to compete again, but kind of life started to take over anything that had to do with physical activity. And having that being taken away from you is like the most devastating thing that it could possibly be, because I was so competitive and I love being active, right? So imagine from doing all that and then going to being paralyzed from the neck down, not being able to do anything, only being able to use your mind. So for about the first year I was suicidal. I was extremely depressed, but obviously like I was still battling all those demons. And I just kept telling myself, like, I know that I was told spinal cord injuries, nerve cells recover at 1/100th of a millimeter every single day. So if that's still progress, right? My mom especially, her and I were super close. And we shared a birthday on February 12th, basically all my life. And just being able to have someone that was willing to do anything for you is like such a blessing when it's your mom. And yeah, I was just really lucky to have them, and all my brothers. They came to visit quite often too, and all my friends. I basically had someone there every single day And yeah, I pushed through it that way, and I had some deep talks with my trainer Grant a couple times in the hospital. And, it's just amazing how much just the talk or like the support can get you through. Told myself to stop being a little bitch and like stop complaining when things got rough, and you take your 10 or 20 minutes to cry out what you need to cry out, and you kind of have to get on with your day because time doesn't stop for anyone, right? And you just gotta keep going no matter what. And it was hard when I first had that meeting with those doctors, and they said like to my parents, son's never gonna walk again. There's no chance. Kind of wrote me off right from the get-go, and that really pissed me off. And they made me work extra hard because it's like, well, these guys, yeah, they went to school for 12 years, but they don't know what I'm capable of. So I wanted to prove them wrong, and see the looks on their face when I go back for my annual meetings, and to see what they see and how amazed they are. Competing against able-bodied people, it's another chip on my shoulder too, because it's more difficult for me to train legs and work my neurologically paralyzed body parts compared to an able-bodied. I didn't want to be dependent on people anymore, because while I was in my wheelchair, my mom took me to all my appointments. She drove me literally everywhere. She changed me, she bathed me, she fed me. When you're as vulnerable and dependent like that on someone when you're 20 years old, we're completely independent. Having to go through that was mentally really rough. Like, I couldn't even put on my own shoes. I couldn't put on my own brace. I couldn't do anything. So, yeah, it was really tough to get over. But those are the things that make you stronger and make you want to be a better person, make you want to be better, makes you want to help other people too. Well, prior to the spinal cord injury, I was 240 pounds, and I was a pretty big boy. I was 6'4", 240, and the doctors did say that when I suffered my spinal cord injury, the sheer mass of my build helped save my spinal cord, because they said you probably would have died at impact. And while I was bodybuilding prior to, my parents would always give me grief about having all these supplements in the cupboard and having all of my meals prepped in the fridge and taking up so much space, and they'd always give me shit about those things. I asked Grant, and I said, hey, like, I want to diet while I'm in the hospital. And so Grant came up with a meal plan for me. He basically researched a bunch of fruits that would help me with certain like phytonutrients and things like that, and what's better for nerve regeneration and things like that. As much you need to feed your body what it needs, right? And especially if you're doing 8 to 10 hours of physiotherapy a day, even though it's not doing a marathon or it's not running or it's not super active, it's literally trying to use your fingers again, or trying to move your arm or trying to move your toes. It's mentally taxing and physically taxing. So eating right and training was basically just the building blocks of my recovery from my spinal cord injury, and I couldn't be more grateful to have met Grant and been able to kind of build a foundation before. If I didn't, I probably would have been dead right now. The gym was basically my safe haven. I loved going there every single day. So after basically my life took a 180 and I went to rock bottom, I've been building it back for the last 5 years, dealing with my mom being diagnosed with 2 stage 4 cancers that she battled with for 10 months. Like, the last 5 years were definitely the hardest years of my life. Started school in January, be a finance manager once I get my business degree. I'd like to be a motivational speaker and tell people about my story, and hopefully help other people that are in similar situation, and hopefully compete next year as well in a wheelchair show and a couple of physique shows if possible. I want to be as healthy as I can. I just want to be the best version of me that I can possibly be, given the circumstances that I've been put in. Because I know that my injury has inspired a lot of people, which is hard for me to believe, because so one of my biggest goals that I probably will ever do in my life is coming up on May 5th. Unfortunately, my mom lost her battle to cancer. After fighting really hard for 10 months, she was diagnosed on August 24th and she passed away on May 26th. So it's coming up on 1 year. on May 26th in 2019. And since her and I shared the same birthday, and she helped me out so much through my injury, and I was given the ability to walk again. And there's a marathon coming up that's in supports cancer recoveries and finding a cure for cancer. So on May 5th, I decided to take the plunge and try and walk a 5K marathon in memory of my mom. And I'm trying to raise $3,000 in donations and walk that 5K, and being able to just stand and walk that 5K would mean the world to me, and doing that in memory of my mom, and being able to showcase some sort of gratitude for like everything that she's done for me. Like I plan on, if this goes well, I want to do this for the rest of my life and do it every single year in memory of her. So as long as you're working towards that goal, great things will happen. So you just gotta keep pushing yourself. And I obviously had a great support system. Like every day throughout that 6 months, my parents came to visit me every single day.